The ban. The Galactic Tavern buzzed with the usual cacophony of alien voices, but a hush fell over the crowd as Commander Sarah Chen strode through the door. Even years after the infamous human ban, the sight of a human warrior still commanded respect and fear. Sarah's weathered face bore the scars of countless battles, her cybernetic left eye scanning the room with cold precision. She made her way to the bar, ignoring the whispers and stares that followed in her wake. Earthen whiskey. Neat, she growled at the bartender, a gelatinous being that quivered slightly as it poured her drink. As Sarah nursed her whiskey, a towering insectoid creature sidled up next to her. Its mandibles clicked nervously before it spoke. "Is it true?" the alien asked, its translator struggling to convey the awe in its voice. "The stories about the Battle of Proxima Centauri." Sarah's organic eye narrowed. "Depends on what stories you've heard," she replied gruffly. The insectoid's compound eyes flickered with excitement. "They say a single human battlecruiser held off an entire Zarkonian armada. That humans, fought with such ferocity it drove the Zarkonians mad." A bitter smile crossed Sarah's face as memories of that hellish day flooded back. The screams of her comrades, the acrid smell of burning metal, the desperate last stand that had become the stuff of legend. "We did what we had to do," she said quietly. "What no one else could." The tavern had gone silent, every alien ear and sensory appendage straining to catch her words. Sarah sighed, realizing she'd have to give them something more. The Zarkonians thought they had us cornered, cut off from reinforcements, outnumbered 100-1. They demanded our surrender. She paused, taking a long swig of whiskey. "We responded by ramming our damaged ships into their command vessels." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The insectoid's antennae twitched in disbelief. "But that's suicide." Sarah's cybernetic eye glowed fiercely. "That's humanity. We don't know how to quit, how to give up. Even when the odds are impossible, we find a way." She stood, her scarred hands gripping the bar. "We fought with everything we had. Improvised weapons, hand-to-hand combat in zero-D hell. We even reprogrammed our maintenance bots into kamikaze drones." The aliens listened in rapt silence as Sarah recounted the brutal 72-hour battle. How human ingenuity and sheer determination had overcome the Zarkonians' superior numbers and technology. By the end, even the most xenophobic patrons found themselves in awe of human tenacity. "And that," Sarah concluded, downing the last of her whiskey, "is why they fear us, why they banned us from their precious wars." As if on cue, the tavern's holoprojector crackled to life. The imperious face of Grand Arbiter Zox, leader of the Galactic Council, filled the screen. "Citizens of the Allied Systems," the avian alien intoned, "today marks the 5th anniversary of the Sentinel Accords. 5 years of peace, made possible by the exclusion of the warlike human race from galactic affairs." Sarah's fist clenched, her knuckles white. The insectoid beside her shifted uncomfortably. "Let us remember," Zox continued, "the chaos and destruction wrought by human involvement in conflicts across the galaxy. Their unpredictable tactics, their disregard for acceptable casualties, The broadcast dissolved into static as Sarah's cybernetic eye emitted a localized EMP pulse. She tossed a credit chip to the startled bartender. "Sorry about the projector," she muttered. "Send me the bill." As Sarah made her way to the exit, the insectoid called out, "But Commander, don't you resent being cast aside? After all you've done for the galaxy?" She paused at the door, her silhouette framed against the alien sunset outside. "They can ban us from their wars," she said softly, "but they can't change who we are. And one day, they'll need us again." With that, Sarah Chen stepped out into the neon-lit streets of the spaceport, leaving behind a tavern full of aliens grappling with a newfound understanding and fear of humanity's potential. Little did they know, forces were already in motion that would shatter the fragile peace of the Sentinel Accords. Humanity's exile was about to be put to the ultimate test. The rising threat. The Galactic Council Chamber, a vast amphitheater of crystalline structures and holographic displays, was in an uproar. Representatives from 100 different species argued in a cacophony of translated voices, their agitation palpable even across the vastness of space. At the center of the chaos stood Zira, the Arcturian ambassador, her luminescent skin pulsed with stress as she addressed her peers. "The swarm is real," she shouted, her tentacles writhing in frustration. "My people's outer colonies have already fallen. If we don't act now, the entire Arcturus sector will be overrun within a standard month." Grand Arbiter Zox rapped his gavel, its thunderous echo silencing the chamber. His avian features were stern as he surveyed the assembled delegates. "We have heard your plea, Ambassador Zira," he said, his voice cold and measured. "But we must approach this situation with caution. The Allied systems cannot rush headlong into another prolonged conflict." A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber, showing grainy footage of a massive insectoid fleet. The ships moved with an unsettling synchronicity, consuming everything in their path. "The swarm defies all attempts at communication," reported Admiral Kex, the reptilian head of the Allied Defense Force. "Their bioships are highly resistant to our conventional weapons, and they seem to adapt rapidly to new tactics." Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembly. Zox's feathers ruffled in agitation. "What of our own fleets, Admiral?" he asked. "Surely we can muster a defense." Kex's scales darkened, a sign of deep concern in his species. "Our simulations show that even with the combined might of all Allied systems, we would suffer catastrophic losses. The swarm's numbers are overwhelming." Silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. It was Grix, the Volcran trade minister, who finally voiced what many were thinking. "What about the humans?" The words hung in the air like a live grenade. Zox's eyes narrowed dangerously. "The Sentinel Accords are clear," he hissed. "Humans are prohibited from engaging in galactic warfare. Their methods are too extreme, too unpredictable." Grix's gelatinous form rippled with determination. And yet, it was those very qualities that saved us from the Zarkonian threat, perhaps in the face of this new enemy. "No," Zox slammed his gavel down. "We will not undo years of peace and stability by unleashing those savages upon the galaxy once more." As the council erupted into fresh arguments, a lone figure slipped out of the chamber unnoticed. Lyrith, junior aide to the Terran Observer mission, had heard enough. Her heart raced as she made her way to the secure communications center. Inside a shielded booth, Lyrith activated an quantum entangled transmitter. The face that appeared on the screen was familiar to every human in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Helena Vasquez, de facto leader of Earth's exiled military. "Admiral," Lyrith whispered, her voice urgent. "It's happening. The swarm is real, and the council is paralyzed with indecision." Vasquez's weathered face remained impassive, but her eyes glinted with a mixture of concern and anticipation. "How bad is it, Lyrith?" "Worse than we feared. The Arcturians are already under attack, and the Allied Defense Force admits they're outmatched. But the Grand Arbiter refuses to even consider lifting the ban on human involvement." The Admiral was silent for a long moment, her mind clearly racing through scenarios and contingencies. Finally, she spoke. "Initiate Protocol Lazarus. It's time to wake the sleepers." Lyrith's eyes widened. "Are you sure? Once we activate the hidden fleets, there's no going back. The Council will see it as an act of war." Vasquez's expression hardened. "If we wait for their permission, there might not be a galaxy left to save. Humanity didn't spend the last 5 years preparing for nothing. We knew this day would come." As Lyrith moved to carry out her orders, Vasquez added, "And send a message to Sarah Chen. Tell her the exile is over. We need every veteran we can get." Halfway across the galaxy, in a nondescript asteroid field, ancient engines roared to life. Massive dreadnoughts, hidden in plain sight as derelict mining operations began to power up their systems. In secret bases and sleeper cells throughout Allied space, human soldiers and pilots received the call they had both dreaded and longed for. Humanity was going to war. Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on, but it was interrupted by a priority alert from the Arcturian border. The holographic display changed to show a terrifying sight, a swarm fleet of unprecedented size, poised to strike at the heart of Allied space. As panic gripped the assembly, a new transmission cut through the chaos. The face of Helena Vasquez appeared, her expression resolute. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady. "5 years ago, you exiled us because you feared our methods. Today, we offer you a choice. Accept our help or watch your civilizations fall." Grand Arbiter Zox sputtered in outrage, but before he could respond, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human fleets were mobilizing, moving to intercept the swarm's advance. In the Arcturian sector, Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of a reactivated battlecruiser. Her cybernetic eye gleamed as she surveyed her crew. A mix of grizzled veterans and young soldiers who had trained in secret for this very moment. "All hands," she called out, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's future. "Battle stations. We've got a galaxy to save." As the human fleet engaged the swarm in the skies above Arcturus, the rest of the galaxy watched in awe and terror. Humanity was unleashed once more upon the cosmic battlefield, and the true test of their prowess was about to begin. Humanity unleashed. The void of space erupted in a symphony of destruction as human warships clashed with the swarm's biovessels above Arcturus Prime. Commander Sarah Chen's battlecruiser, the Defiant, spearheaded the assault, its plasma cannons carving swaths through the insectoid armada. "Evasive pattern Delta." Sarah barked, her cybernetic eye processing battlefield data faster than any organic mind could. "Concentrate fire on their lead ships." The human fleet moved with a fluidity that belied their 5-year exile. Smaller craft darted between the lumbering swarm vessels, deploying experimental weapons developed in secret during their banishment. Lieutenant Ravi Kapoor, Sarah's tactical officer, called out from his station. "Commander, the swarm is adapting to our attack patterns. Their ships are evolving in real time." Sarah's organic eye narrowed. "Then we'll just have to evolve faster. Initiate Operation Chimera." Across the human fleet, ships began to reconfigure themselves. Modular weapons systems swapped out, hull plating rearranged, and energy signatures shifted. It was a tactic born of humanity's greatest strengths: adaptability and unpredictability. The swarm, for all its biological superiority, found itself outmaneuvered. Human ships that had been prey moments before suddenly became predators, exploiting weaknesses the hive mind hadn't even realized existed. On the planet's surface, Arcturian refugees watched in awe as the tide of battle turned. Zira, the Arcturian ambassador, stood among her people, her luminescent skin pulsing with hope for the first time in weeks. "By the eternal nebulae," she whispered, "they're actually doing it." Back on the Defiant, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile as another swarm mothership succumbed to their assault. But the victory was short-lived. "Commander," Ravi's voice was urgent, "we're detecting a massive energy surge from the swarm fleet. Something big is coming through." The fabric of space seemed to tear as a colossal bioship emerged from fold space. It dwarfed even the largest human dreadnoughts, its surface writhing with organic weaponry. "Hive Queen," Sarah breathed, recognizing the command ship from intel briefings. "All ships, form up on the Defiant. We take that thing down, we might just win this war." As the human fleet regrouped for a desperate assault, the galactic political landscape was undergoing its own upheaval. In the council chambers, Grand Arbiter Zox watched the battle unfold with a mixture of awe and dread. The humans were stemming the tide, yes, but at what cost? Their tactics were as brutal and unpredictable as ever. "We must sue for peace with the swarm," Zox declared, his feathers ruffling anxiously. before the humans' actions doom us all to endless war. But he was shouted down by a growing coalition of delegates. Grix, the Volcran trade minister, rose to address the assembly. With all due respect, Arbiter, the gelatinous being burbled, the humans are saving our worlds while we debate. It's time we admitted our mistake in exiling them. The chamber erupted in a chorus of agreement. Species that had once feared humanity now saw them as their last, best hope for survival. Across Allied space, other human fleets engaged swarm incursions. Each battle was a testament to human ingenuity and determination. In the Orient sector, Admiral Vasquez led a daring raid on a swarm hive world. Her ships deployed swarms of AI-driven fighter drones, overwhelming the enemy's biodefenses through sheer numbers, a tactic ironically inspired by the swarm itself. On New Terra, a colony world on the edge of human space, militia forces held the line against a swarm ground invasion. They used terraforming equipment as improvised weapons, reshaping the battlefield itself to their advantage. But it was in the skies above Arcturus Prime that the fate of the galaxy would be decided. The Defiant shuddered as another barrage from the Hive Queen struck home. Sarah gripped her command chair, her cybernetic eye frantically calculating options. Shields at 12%, Ravi reported, his voice strained. "We can't take much more of this, Commander." Sarah's mind raced. Conventional tactics weren't working. The Hive Queen was too powerful, too adaptive. They needed something the swarm couldn't possibly anticipate. "All hands," she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Prepare for atmospheric insertion." Ravi's head snapped up in shock. "Commander, you can't be serious. The Defiant isn't designed for." "To hell with what it's designed for." Sarah cut him off. "The swarm thinks in 3 dimensions. We'll show them what happens when you fight humans in their natural habitat." The Defiant plunged towards Arcturus Prime, its hull glowing red-hot as it hit the atmosphere. The Hive Queen, caught off guard by the suicidal maneuver, followed. "Redirect all power to forward shields," Sarah ordered as the planet's surface rushed up to meet them. "Arm the Thanatos device." The Thanatos was a weapon of last resort, capable of unraveling the very fabric of spacetime. Using it in atmosphere was beyond reckless. It was potentially apocalyptic. But Sarah had seen the reports. She knew what would happen if the swarm wasn't stopped here and now. As the Defiant skimmed the tops of Arcturian megaforests, the Hive Queen loomed behind them. Sarah's hand hovered over the launch controls. "For Earth," she whispered. "For all of us." She pressed the button. The world went white. When Sarah regained consciousness, she found herself lying in the wreckage of the Defiance bridge. Through a gash in the hull, she could see the Arcturian sky and the drifting debris of the Hive Queen. As rescue ships descended and cheers erupted from surviving crew members, Sarah allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Humanity had proven itself once again, but at what cost? And how would the galaxy react to their violent return to the galactic stage? As medical teams rushed to treat the wounded, Sarah's gaze turned to the stars above. Whatever came next, one thing was certain. Humanity was back, and the universe would never be the same. The turning point. The aftermath of the Battle of Arcturus Prime sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Footage of human warships danced their deadly ballet against the swarm spread like wildfire across the Allied systems. Citizens who had once feared humanity now spoke their name in reverent whispers. But in the corridors of power, the debate raged on. The Galactic Council chamber was packed to capacity. Grand Arbiter Zox, his plumage ragged from sleepless nights, called the emergency session to order. "We cannot ignore the facts," he began, his voice heavy. "The humans have saved Arcturus Prime and pushed back the swarm. But at what cost? The Thanatos device has left a wound in spacetime that may never heal." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Zira, the Arcturian ambassador, rose to speak. "With respect, Arbiter," she said, her bioluminescence pulsing with intensity, "my people live because of human intervention. Yes, there was collateral damage, but the alternative was extinction. Before Zox could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Admiral Helena Vasquez strode in, flanked by Sarah Chen and a contingent of human officers. The room fell silent. Esteemed members of the council, Vasquez began, her voice carrying the weight of command. I come before you not to debate the past, but to secure our collective future. The swarm is wounded, but not defeated. We have a plan to end this war, but we'll need the full cooperation of the Allied systems to pull it off. Grand Arbiter Zox's feathers ruffled in agitation. You dare to make demands of this council, after violating the Sentinel Accords. Sarah stepped forward, her cybernetic eye gleaming. With all due respect, Arbiter, the Accords became null and void the moment the swarm threatened galactic civilization. We're not here to ask permission. We're here to save lives, including yours. The chamber erupted in a mix of outrage and support, but as the shouting reached a fever pitch, a new voice cut through the chaos. Enough. All eyes turned to the source. Phylith, the enigmatic representative of the Voidwalkers, a species so ancient and advanced they rarely involved themselves in galactic politics. Phylith's form shimmered, barely constrained by three-dimensional space. I have observed in silence long enough. The humans speak truth. The swarm is a threat beyond any you have faced. If we do not stand united, all that is will cease to be. A hush fell over the assembly. When the Voidwalkers spoke, the galaxy listened. Xylith continued, I propose an emergency measure. Grant the humans provisional authority to lead our combined forces against the swarm. When the crisis has passed, we will revisit the terms of their involvement in galactic affairs. The vote was swift and nearly unanimous. Operation Firestorm was a go. Aboard the newly christened HMS Prometheus, the largest warship ever constructed by human hands, Admiral Vasquez stood before a holographic display of the Milky Way. Surrounding her were the commanders of a dozen allied species, each bringing unique strengths to the fight. The swarm operates on a hive mind, Vasquez explained, highlighting a distant sector of space. Our intelligence suggests the core of that mind is located here, in the Veil Nebula. We destroy it. We destroy the swarm's ability to coordinate on a galactic scale. Sarah Chen, now promoted to Commodore, studied the map with her cybernetic eye. The nebula's radiation will play havoc with our sensors and shields. It's the perfect defensive position, which is why we'll need to draw them out. Vasquez replied with a grim smile. Commodore Chen, you'll lead the diversionary attack here, at their forward bases in the Perseus Arm. Make them think we're going for a conventional victory. Sarah nodded, already formulating tactics. Vasquez turned to Graxler, the spindly arachnid strategist. Your stealth ships will infiltrate the nebula while the swarm is distracted. Plant quantum beacons so our main fleet can jump in for the killing blow. The plan was audacious, relying on the combined strengths of a dozen species. Humans provided the backbone of military might, but each race brought crucial elements to the table. Vulcaran energy weapons, Arcturian bioshields, even Voidwalker technology to navigate the treacherous nebula. As the commanders dispersed to brief their forces, Vasquez held Sarah back. Commodore, she said softly, your diversion is likely a one-way trip. You know that, right? Sarah's organic eye met Vasquez's gaze unflinchingly. Someone has to hold the line. Admiral, humanity's good at that. Vasquez clasped Sarah's shoulder. Given hell. Chen. The next weeks were a blur of frenetic activity. Shipyards across Allied space worked around the clock, integrating technologies and tactics from a dozen cultures into a cohesive fighting force. On 100 worlds, soldiers of all species trained together, learning to complement each other's strengths. Ancient grudges were set aside in the face of extinction. And then, finally, it was time. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Defiant II, as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of swarm-controlled space. Ahead of them lay the largest concentration of enemy forces ever recorded. "All ships, this is Commodore Chen," she broadcast to the fleet. "You all know the mission. We're the anvil against which the swarm will break itself. Hold the line, no matter the cost. For Earth, for all our homes." Chen out. As the swarm ships swarmed towards them like angry insects, Sarah allowed herself one last moment of reflection. She thought of Earth, of the toll this war had taken, of the friends she had lost. Then her cybernetic eye gleamed with determination, and she gave the order. "All ships, engage." The battle that followed would be remembered for generations as one of the most brutal in galactic history. Sarah's forces fought with a desperation born of knowing that every moment they held out gave Vasquez's strike team a better chance of success. Ships on both sides fell by the hundreds. The space around them became a graveyard of twisted metal and ruptured bioships. Just when it seemed Sarah's fleet would be overwhelmed, a massive energy surge lit up their sensors. In the heart of the Veil Nebula, Admiral Vasquez's strike force had reached its target. The Prometheus unleashed a weapon of terrifying power, born from the combined genius of a united galaxy. The swarm's hive mind shattered. Across the battlefield, enemy ships suddenly lost cohesion, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Sarah's battered fleet pressed the advantage, mopping up the now disorganized swarm forces. As the last enemy ship fell silent, Sarah slumped in her command chair, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity and its newfound allies had saved the galaxy. But as the adrenaline faded, Sarah knew the real work was just beginning. The swarm was defeated, but the galaxy was forever changed. Humanity's place in it would never be the same. As she looked out at the starfield, littered with the debris of battle, Sarah Chen allowed herself a small smile. Whatever came next, humanity would face it head-on. It was, after all, what they did best. A new era. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council, once a symbol of unity and order, now stood as a testament to the changes wrought by war. Its crystalline walls, previously pristine, were scarred by hasty repairs. The usual sea of delegates had thinned, with many worlds still reeling from the swarm's onslaught. At the center of it all stood Admiral Helena Vasquez and Commodore Sarah Chen, heroes of humanity and saviors of the galaxy. The weight of countless lives saved and lost hung heavy on their shoulders. Grand Arbiter Zox, his plumage still ruffled from the strain of recent events, called the assembly to order. "Esteemed delegates," he began, his voice carrying a weariness that belied his august position, "we gather today to address the future of our galactic community in the wake of the Swarm War. More specifically, we must decide the status of humanity within our ranks." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Grix, the Volcran trade minister, was the first to speak. "With all due respect, Arbiter," the gelatinous being burbled, "is there truly any debate to be had? Humanity has proven itself 100 times over. Without them, we would all be drone fodder for the swarm." Cheers of agreement rose from many quarters, but not all were convinced. The Tellarite ambassador, his tusks clicking in agitation, countered. "We cannot ignore the devastation wrought by human methods," he growled. "Entire systems lie in ruin, space-time itself wounded by their weapons. Are we to welcome such destructive potential back into our midst without safeguards?" The debate raged on, with passionate arguments on both sides. Admiral Vasquez stood stoically through it all, her face an impassive mask. But Sarah Chen, her cybernetic eye wearing as it processed the political maneuvering, felt her patience wearing thin. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice cutting through the clamor. "Enough," Sarah said, her tone brooking no argument. "You sit here and debate while worlds still burn. The swarm may be broken, but pockets of resistance remain. Every moment we waste in this chamber is a moment we could be out there, saving lives." She swept her gaze across the assembled delegates, her organic eye blazing with intensity. "You feared us for our potential for destruction. Now fear us for our capacity to create, to defend, to unite. Humanity doesn't ask for your permission to help. We offer you a choice. Stand with us in forging a stronger, more unified galaxy, or step aside. A hush fell over the chamber. Even Zox seemed taken aback by the raw conviction in Sarah's words. It was Kylith, the Void Walker representative, who broke the silence. Their form shimmered as they spoke, their voice resonating on multiple planes of existence. The human speaks wisdom beyond her years, Kylith intoned. We stand at a crossroads. The old ways have failed us. It is time for a new path. What followed was unlike anything the Council had seen in its long history. Led by Kylith's example, representatives from across the galaxy began to pledge their support not just for humanity's reinstatement, but for a complete restructuring of galactic governance. The Arcturians, their bioluminescence pulsing with excitement, proposed a joint defense force led by human tactical experts. The Volcran offered to open their trade routes, sharing economic models that had made them prosperous. Even the Tellarites, grudgingly impressed by Sarah's boldness, suggested cultural exchange programs to foster better understanding between species. As the session stretched into its 14th hour, a new galactic order began to take shape. The old council would be dissolved, replaced by a more dynamic system that could respond quickly to threats and opportunities alike. At its core would be a principle inspired by humanity's finest qualities: adaptability, innovation, and an indomitable spirit. Admiral Vasquez, watching the proceedings with a mixture of pride and caution, leaned in to whisper to Sarah, "You realize what you've done, don't you? The responsibility we're taking on." Sarah nodded, her cybernetic eye whirring as it calculated probabilities and outcomes. "Someone has to lead the way, Admiral. Might as well be us." As the new accords were drawn up and ratified, news spread across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, beings of all species watched in awe as humanity stepped onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors, but as partners in a grand new endeavor. On Earth, crowds gathered in cities and settlements alike, cheering as the broadcast showed their leaders taking the central role in shaping the future of the Milky Way. Children looked to the stars with renewed wonder, dreaming of the adventures that awaited them. But it wasn't all celebration. In the war-torn sectors of space, the real work was just beginning. Sarah Chen found herself on the bridge of a new ship, the Unity, a vessel that combined technologies from a dozen different species. Her crew was a mosaic of galactic diversity, each member bringing unique skills and perspectives to their mission. As they set course for a cluster of worlds still struggling to rebuild, Sarah reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this point. The exile, the secret preparations, the desperate battles against the swarm, it all seemed like a lifetime ago. "Commodore," her Arcturian first officer chimed, his skin pulsing with a question. "The Council, the new Galactic Assembly, is requesting an update on our progress." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Some things, it seemed, never changed. "Tell them we're just getting started," she replied, her gaze fixed on the starfield ahead. "There's a galaxy out there that needs rebuilding, and humanity's ready to do what we do best." As the Unity jumped to faster-than-light speed, Sarah Chen felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she'd experienced before. The war had forged humanity into something greater, something that could stand tall among the stars not through fear or intimidation, but through leadership and cooperation. The ban was lifted, the exile over. But in many ways, humanity's true journey was just beginning. In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, a new era dawned, and at its heart stood the human race, no longer feared conquerors or exiled warriors, but integral partners in a grand cosmic community. The stars, once forbidden, now beckoned with infinite possibility.